Now the mood is set. We are all now friends. The room is ready. The tables are ready to set. The wait staff are ready to serve you. And I trust the guest speaker is anxiously waiting. It's time to take to the podium and give us some food for thought. So once again, a warm welcome to all here tonight in this room and those watching from above. A word to the wise. Rumor has it, there's a lower level to which those who drink too much are escorted and never to see again. So watch your drinks. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
Now I call on Reverend Nicholas Tweed, pastor of St. Paul's Amy Church, to do the opening prayer and the blessing of the food, which will be followed by a moment of silence for those members and friends who have passed over the last year.
Every head bowed. Gracious and merciful God, as we assemble in this place for the 38th time, we give you thanks as we pause amidst the work, as we pause amidst the struggle, to take time to celebrate. And as we gather to celebrate, we are mindful, O God, of those who have labored in the vineyard and now sleep with you. While their presence has departed, we pray that their witness will continue to live through us. Bless this great organization that continues to champion the cause of labor, that continues to proclaim without reservation that all labor has dignity and that every man and woman is entitled to a decent day's pay for a decent day's work, safe working conditions, proper health care, adequate provision to provide for their families. And so in this changing time of shrinking economies and dwindling labor markets and rising technology, we need this organization and its witness now more than ever before. So we pray, oh God, that you continue to be the wind beneath its wings. Bless the leadership, the president, the executive. Bless every division leader, every shop steward, every member who stands on the wall and responds to the call to sacrifice on behalf of others. And so we pray that even as we pause in this place, that we'll be mindful of those that are hungry tonight, that we'll be mindful of those that don't earn a decent day's pay tonight. And so bless this gathering, bless this organization, and may these moments together be a source of fellowship that will strengthen and inspire and encourage us to continue in the work, ever remembering, united we stand, divided we fall. In Jesus' name we pray, and may you bless the food that we will partake of and use it to strengthen our bodies. And all of God's people said, amen.
Good evening, brothers, sisters, honored guests. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce to you our guest speaker, Dr. Michael Andrew Charles, the past president, current general secretary of the Bermuda Union of Teachers. So, I was fortunate enough to meet Dr. Charles just the other day when I was asked to do this introduction. And it was a quick meeting, but it didn't really take me long to realize that this man has dedication. He's been here for a very long time, and he's put in a lot of good work for the people of Bermuda and the Bermuda Union of Teachers. A lot of good work. So I'll just give a very brief introduction, then we'll leave it to him to give us a speech. Dr. Charles was born in Grenada, yet he grew up in Trinidad and Tobago after he moved there at the age of 4. So it wasn't much longer later, when he was about 17 years old, that he moved to the city of New York, initially, if I'm not mistaken, to study and become a lab technician, which is quite a distance away from where you became, sir. So I'm glad you did it. It was while he was in New York that Dr. Charles experienced teaching for the very first time, showing some others how to be lab technicians and go into that experience, and giving some of his experience to others. And from what he told me, that's what really motivated him to enhance his own education and motivated him to become a teacher himself so he could continue to educate others. He went on to receive his bachelor's degree in physical education and a master's in public health education. And it wasn't until 1969, April of 1969, that he came to Bermuda, coincidentally on a tour playing cricket against some of our local teams. One of them is mine. God bless Rangers. So I don't know what the score was of that game, but he instantly fell in love with the country and with our people. And he regularly visited until 1979, when he was given an opportunity by the Ministry of Education to work for Paget Primary School. So that was a blessing to get him here finally, and he accepted the job, took the opportunity. And while he was teaching in Paget Primary, that's when he really became involved with the Bermuda Union, a union of teachers. So that's what, 45 odd years ago, sir? Just about? Before my time. God bless you. So it's evident that this man has put in a lot of time and a lot of work into this union, and he moved up throughout the years. He saw them move from building to building to building to building until they got to their current location. I think one of them was actually underneath an ice cream parlor, you told me, some point. It's incredible to have somebody who is seeing such growth within the union structure of all this time present to us this evening a speech that I'm looking forward to very much. Dr. Charles has consistently been a guiding presence within the BUT. He served on the executive board for over 40 years. He was the president on 2 separate occasions, and he settled into the general secretary position in 1999. So that's 20 years ago. That's dedication, man. He's held that position ever since and been a relentless advocate for the public education system and the rights of educators in Bermuda. That's a responsibility that was a lot to take on, and I, for one, am grateful, sir. So I hope that you'll all be so kind as to join me in welcoming to the stage, after the solo, of course, Dr. Michael Andrew Charles.
Thank you very much, Brother Shine. He said he was preparing something for me, but I didn't know it was this much. Thank you, Willard. Also, Willard, when I was coming in, said he hoped he can do justice before me. Thank you very much. Good evening, brothers and sisters of the Bermuda Industrial Union. It is an honor to celebrate with you once again. Good evening to the Acting Premier, Colonel David Birch, and all the members of Parliament that are here this evening. Good evening to the leadership of the BIU, my good sister Molly Burgess, the General Secretary of the BIU, and Brother Prez Chris Filbert, a union man at heart, if there ever was one. It is my pleasure to bring you greetings on behalf of the Bermuda Union of Teachers. We stand and celebrate the BIU at this your 38th annual Labor Day banquet. Many of us have come to take for granted that the BIU banquet will help us to kick off the Labor Day weekend. But a legacy like this isn't built by chance. And so I applaud the BIU and those who serve it for their determination in making sure that the Labor Day weekend is rightfully recognized and celebrated. And of course, it's always a pleasure to see the ladies come out in their finest. Some of you were generous enough to join the BUT in February of this year in this very same hall to celebrate the 100th anniversary of our union. I was chatting with a young man sometime after that celebration and what it meant to a union. And it was a few minutes into the conversation that I realized that he thought that I was 100 years old. Needless to say, we had to change the topic very quickly. Brothers and sisters, your presence tonight, on that night, was important because it marked the milestone of 100 years of trade unionism in Bermuda. They say there is power in a name. So I call now the names of Rufus Stubble, Edith Crawford, Matilda Crawford, and Adele Tucker, that their spirits may live on and continue to guide and strengthen us. For you see, they knew well what we can ill afford to forget. They knew that the causes of the working class are worth fighting for because the work of the working class is essential to a progressive society and the only way for the working class to ensure its rights are honored and its work properly valued is for them to come together in solidarity. Brothers and sisters, Bermuda is a small place. And if we are honest with ourselves, it's a very, very small place. But the world is getting smaller. 8. That's the number of minutes it took from the moment of his passing for the news of Michael Jackson's death to travel around the globe. 8 minutes. And that was 10 years ago. Because the world is getting smaller, we are and must stay more connected than ever. As we sit here tonight, many of our brethren around the world are under siege. 10. That's the number of countries where union members were killed as a direct result of their union activities in 2018. These countries span the globe, among them Colombia and Honduras, the Philippines, Turkey and Italy, Brazil and Zimbabwe. Just imagine for a moment the impact it would have on our community to have one of us in this room taken down because they spoke out on behalf of all of us. A daunting thought. 53, the number of trade unionists who were killed for the cause in 2018. 34 in Colombia alone. The report of the 2019 Global Rights Index documents the widespread use of extreme violence against the defenders of workplace rights, including large-scale arrests and detentions. I was fortunate enough this year to attend Education International's conference in Thailand, along with some of my executive members. Education International is the umbrella body for teacher trade unions throughout the world. They cover some 170 countries, 30 million teachers. Reports from educators around the world are alarming. In Brazil, teachers are accompanied in their classrooms with gunmen, soldiers, to ensure that the government's curriculum is taught. I have to caution you, sisters and brothers. We cannot get lulled into thinking these things only happen over there. 503, the number of state workers dismissed without cause in Trinidad and Tobago. Their only sin was belonging to the Communications Workers Union. 50,000. The number of postal workers denied their right to strike and forced back to work on November 27, 2018. And that was following a special bill called C89. 50,000 workers in Canada. Now, you will certainly know that the right to strike or to withdraw your labor is a fundamental right of the worker. And those of you older than 4, but younger than 100, will remember a similar effort when the One Bermuda Alliance brought an injunction against members of the Bermuda Trade Union Congress challenging our right to strike in the wave of the 2015 Furlough Day protests. Those were difficult days. I remember on the morning of our court case, my wife asking me which pair of my fancy socks she should bring if we weren't successful. The injunction was rightly struck down by the Chief Justice, Justice K. Willie. But as the 2018 ruling in Canada shows, the challenge will come again. If you think that's an exaggeration, just rely on this fact. In 2018, 19 out of 25 countries in the Americas violated the right to strike. So it's not far from home. One of the hardest lessons I've learned as a trade unionist is that the battle is never won. As unions, we find ourselves returning to the same challenges over and over and over again. Our watch must be vigilant so as not to lose the rights and privilege that we have already secured. What then is contributing to this hostile environment? What is it? The systematic dismantling of the building blocks of freedom and democracy is taking place through sustained attacks on workers' rights and workplace democracy. Around the world, there are increasing restrictions on the right to strike free society, and assembly. The global economy is facing risks which could severely disrupt economic activity and inflict significant damage on long-term economic development. Global levels of public and private debt continue to rise. Economic growth, where it exists, is often failing to reach the people who need it most. International tensions and nationalistic politics are also contributing to the global challenges. We are witnessing a rise in populism, a rise in racism, more abuse of power by politicians, and the erosion of human rights. Governments are attempting to dismantle trade union rights, and the influence over government decision-making by big business continues to grow. Grassroots democracy is being attacked. My friends, for many of our colleagues around the globe, these are difficult times indeed. The BUT has maintained a strong relationships with our colleagues in the Caribbean. Our alliance with the Caribbean Union of Teachers strengthens us and keeps us connected to issues in the region. At our 38th biennial conference earlier this month, a colleague from St. Vincent, Philbert John his name, shared a lesson with us that I want to share with you tonight. And he began simply by asking us, what is the name of the ruling party in St. Vincent? And the audience answered, the St. Vincent Labour Party. And in St. Lucia, the St. Lucia Labour Party. And in Dominica, I think you get the idea, the Dominica Labour Party. And then it's the Jamaica Labour Party. Here in Bermuda, however, we do things a little differently. We have the Progressive Labour Party. And there are more Labour parties throughout the Caribbean. It seems that the region has a strong inclination to support Labour governments. But what does experience tell us about the working class, about the relationships between Labour governments and the working class constituents that they propose to serve? Ironically, my experience is that Labour governments struggle to maintain the same rapport with their working class constituents that they espouse in the fervent lead-up to elections. As an example, my teachers are well into their third year of negotiation talks with very little progress toward any meaningful reform of our decade-old collective bargaining agreement. Our experience is not unique. At present, throughout the Caribbean, several other teacher unions are engaged in court battles with their Labour government counterparts. I am reminded of a story about a turkey. Yes, a turkey. The turkey was chatting with a bull one day, and they were in the pasture, and he said, you know, I would love to be able to get to the top of that tree so we can look around. So the bull shrugged, and he said, listen, why don't you nibble off my droppings? Because it's packed with nutrients, and it'll give you energy to climb the tree. So the turkey shook his head, and then he took a peck, and he found, strangely, that it gave him some energy, and he got up to the first branch. So the next day he came by, and he did the same thing. He got up to the second branch. Well, after the fourth day, He was able to get to the top of the tree. He was sharp now. And just like that, a shot rang out. Bam! He was spotted by a farmer and shot out of the tree. Labor governments would do well to heal the moral of the story. BS may get you to the top. But it won't keep you there. But what causes this discontent? What causes this disconnect? Is it possible that the representatives of labor government genuinely want to serve, but they lack the experience and perspective to do so effectively? Think about it for a moment. How many of our current elected officials have been active participants in any of the island's trade unions? How many have experienced the trials of negotiations or the tensions in a room when a motion to strike is put on the floor? I make this comment not to suggest that the elected members' intentions are not well directed, but rather to highlight that their ability to connect, their ability to engage with genuine understanding can only be limited if they have never sat on the other side. There is an old Native American saying, "Do not judge a man until you have walked 2 moons in his moccasins." And what part do the technocrats play? The technocrats, those are the PSs and directors and the managers. What part do they play? After all, these people, for the most part, are the ones that we engage. These are the people who are tasked to carry out the policies of government. Speaking now directly from my experience as a representative of the educators of Bermuda public school system, certainly the technical officers and civil servants have a role to play in effective labor relations. However, at the end of the day, responsibility sits with our elected officials. Really, what is the purpose of government representatives if it is not, at least in part, to ensure that its policies are implemented with integrity and humanity? Far too often, we are faced with a mindset that belittles the contribution of educators, their work, and actively undermines existing guidelines, almost always to the detriment of our teachers and students. I'm talking solidarity tonight, not school. However, you don't put Mike Charles in front of a mic and he not talk about school. So I will say this once. A country that does not educate its people well will relegate its citizens to being second-class citizens in their own country. Our government today is making the mistake, continuing out of habit, a pattern of education that was built by design. Watch carefully now. This mistake, this lack of vision to revolutionize how we raise up our young people, raise them up to believe in their potential and in their ability to lead this country. This mistake of refusing to modernize our schools and support our programs allow the age-old design of a second-class education system to continue. Brothers and sisters, the population in Westgate is not by chance. It is by design. So for those of us here and everywhere, it is time for us to put our money, our time, and all our energy to where our mouth is and make public education in Bermuda second to none. That was my piece. Now let's get refocused. Leadership, management, workers. How do we bring them together? Is a culture of consultation and collaboration possible? Or are the goals of workers and employers diametrically opposed? Are the employee and employer doomed to a relationship of struggle? Or are they inextricably linked? Have you ever noticed that in most cases the worker gets along very well with his or her employer? There is always a pleasant good morning, a friendly joke during slow periods, toast at the Christmas party. I mean, you really like the guy. The same thing happens with your union leadership. We meet the government and employers' representatives. We shake hands. We laugh about cup match results. We ask about family members. For a brief time, it seems that we are batting for the same team. But as soon as the meeting is called to order, well, something happens. Something happens to our team spirit. We retreat into our silos and we fight from there. How can we get management to put themselves in the worker's place? After all, aren't we all workers? Don't we all deserve to be treated fairly? The best answer, brothers and sisters, is working together. Genuinely working together. You see, collaboration is more than an empty trail of letters and emails that do nothing more than say, I told you so. Collaboration is more than the empty meetings that pretend to gather input only to push forward with the original plan in a new package. And collaboration is more than giving lip service to creating solutions only to have the same challenges persist month after month and year after year. This is the regime we find ourselves in at the moment. It is at present a frustrating and counterproductive regime that is filled with constant busyness, but very little gets done. The BUT has experienced leadership with true collaboration before. So we know what it looks like. We know how it feels. And as unions, we are eager to return to a framework of cooperation where there is genuine respect for the position of both parties. We are ready to contribute to exchanges of ideas that do more than fill up minutes on a page, but result in progressive action. We understand that our ideas and our solutions are not the only solutions, But we need those on the other side to understand this too. We need a return to sound judgment and decisions that respect what has already been agreed, so we are not constantly fighting yesterday's battles. And sometimes, just sometimes, we have to put the research aside and look at the situation and make a decision that serves those in need. We call for a commitment to making decisions that follow the rhetoric of respecting the service of our members, serving Bermuda and its children. You will be hard-pressed to find examples of unions that do not work actively to collaborate. Working together is in our DNA. We hold to it even when some will try to use it against us. In recent history, it was the unionized government workers who offered the Bermudian people economic relief in the form of the Furlough Day Agreement. We took the country on our backs, each one of us sacrificing our personal wages to stabilize government books on danger of collapsing. We collaborated. Even more so, we came with solutions, offering our sacrifice when the experts were out of ideas. This sacrifice was given just quiet applause in the press, and we went back to business. Fast forward 18 months of significant personal sacrifice on the part of our members. We helped the OBA government save face. We put money, millions of dollars, more than $100 million back in Bermuda's books. And when the term of agreement came to an end, we were vilified. The government of the day, and sadly, many of the people of Bermuda accused us of not cooperating for the good of all, when in fact, it was they who were not keeping their word. It is easy to feel bitter when we look back at times like these. Easy to feel the anxiety and frustration tense in our shoulders. Instead, we must take courage that we stood on the right side of history when we made that agreement to sacrifice for our people. And we stood on the right side of history when we spent the night on the grounds of Cabinet, making it clear that we would not be taken for fools. Even when it is difficult, we must never stray from the commitment to collaborate. And if we stick to this commitment, we will always find ourselves on the right side of history. I come back to the point that Bermuda is a small place. Bermuda is a close community. We are leaders in the world in many ways. Let us become leaders in our respect for the role of unions in promoting progressive societies. I challenge those on the so-called other side of the table to tune into the fact that we are at the same table. Where our colleagues face unspeakable challenges around the world, let them be able to turn and say, look at how well it works in Bermuda. Brothers and sisters, we are fortunate to stand on the shoulders of giants. Many have worked, struggled, and sacrificed that we may have the rights and privilege we hold dear today. Now we must be the giants of tomorrow's generation and carry the torch of solidarity into the next 100 years. But you better believe that we have to steel ourselves for the journey. As we go forward, unions, all of us must be relevant. We must commit to educating our members, especially our young people. Our young members, in turn, will make and remake the Union. Do not be afraid of the seemingly radical ideas of the youth. Our ideas were once radical too. Embrace them. Their ideas may disturb you, but they will cause you to think. In the same way, we must challenge the young people to know the history, the honor, the legacy that they have a responsibility to build on. Involvement in our young people will result in a more vibrant organization. Unions must stay relevant. They must be principled. Trade unions should apply the four-way test when making decisions. Is it the truth? Will it build goodwill and better working relationships? Will the outcome take us forward? It is not by chance that the Bermuda Union of Teachers has won the ruling in every formal arbitration and court proceedings that it's been engaged over the last 20 years, without exception. Rest assured that this track record is not the result of creative legal arguments or any twists of good fortune. We take pride in the record of our success because it confirms that we stand on principles of fair treatment for our members. We stand on principles that honor our collective bargaining agreement, and most importantly, we stand for justice. And to those who seek to take on leadership in our trade unions, they must be principled leaders. Principled leaders put the interests of those they serve above their own interests. I will lean here on the words of President Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, when he said, "Leaders promote others, not themselves." Leaders' decision-making is constant. They are not afraid to make unpopular decisions. They share credit for success with the people who made them possible. They do what is right than rather what is convenient, regardless of the consequences. As unions, we must be principled. We must also be determined. We must take a long-term view to protecting the rights of our members. As we know all too well, the opposition will always be there. We even get opposition from the people who decry our placards in the streets, not realizing that they benefit every day from the outcome of our struggle. Do not non-unionized workers get maternity and paternity leave, vacation pay, safe working conditions? These so-called norms are not norms at all. These norms were earned by the blood of unionists spilled on the streets at the Haymarket protests in 1886. Unionists who were determined to secure fair working conditions in the form of an 8-hour week. These norms were envisioned by the whispers of teachers at a graveside in 1919. Unionists who were determined to have compensation during periods of illness for teachers who gave their lives to children and were then left with nothing for themselves. These norms have been earned over and over and over again by unionists here in Bermuda and around the globe. Unionists who, after they have labored on the job site, come back and sacrifice laboring again at the negotiating table, and if necessary, in the streets. Unions, sisters and brothers, must be determined that our labor will not be in vain. It has been my humble privilege to serve my students and teachers over the years. I hope in some small way, through this work, that I have served Bermuda, which has been my home. I want each of you here tonight to know that you are called to serve. Oftentimes in conversation, someone will say to me, the union is weak, or the union is being inflexible, or the union is being whatever they feel on that day. And while they say it, they wave their finger at me, or they point in the direction of Brother Chris or Brother Jason, as if the union could ever be as simple, as little, as trivial as the lone man who dares to give voice to the hopes of many. The union is not Mike Charles. It's not Chris Ferbert. The union is not even the president, not even its executive. The union is not any one of you. The union is all of us. It is the strong and the weak. It is the member who walks proudly in the street and the member who is timid and afraid to leave his or her desk. Brothers and sisters, it is only together that we are strong. But to stand together, we have to be willing to stand. And so, each of us, each of you are called to stand up and take our unions forward. It's nice to stand tonight and take a picture in our fancy outfits. That's okay. But we also need you to stand on Monday. Stand on Monday. As we walk and celebrate labor, bring your children. Teach them that solidarity matters. Teach them that labor matters. We need you to stand when a colleague asks, why bother to go to the union meeting? We need you to stand in good times because it makes it easier to stand in the difficult times. We need you. We need each of you to stand up, and together we will keep the legacy of labor alive. Members of the Industrial Union, citizens of Bermuda, I wish you solidarity, and thank you for listening.
Come on, keep that applause going, people. We'd like to call to the stage Brother Stephen Deal. We'll do a presentation to the future leaders.
Oh, these are my two bags. Yeah, the two small bags. All right, cool. Good evening, everyone. Before I call Sister Robertson and Brother Darrell on stage to receive their awards, I'd just like to take 2 minutes of your time and just encourage those two young folks to understand what this gentleman said tonight. It's very important. I thought all the analogies were very direct. I appreciate it. So from a younger person to a person that's already been where I'd like to be someday, I personally would like to tell you thank you. To the brother and sister that will be joining me on stage shortly to receive an award on behalf of the union, I first would like to give you a story of my own of what I've taken all of 20 plus years to actually finally understand and realize is that when you bury something and when you plant something, both of them actually go through the same process. However, the one that you planted, you hope to receive something better than what you put in the ground. Yeah? As the gentleman stated, individuality is key. Always be yourself, and it takes the quiet and the loud to come together for us to stand united. All right, so if Brother Darrell and Sister Robinson can join me on stage, I would like to present you with these two gift bags. I didn't do any first names because I didn't want to mess anybody's name up. So the two, two here. I just want to say, right, you guys' speeches were perfect. Both of you actually did what you do best. None of you tried to outdo the other. All of you, you both stuck to your points. You stuck with your strengths. You were very clear, direct, and honest. And I was well received. Bill? Can we give them a round of applause? Brother, that one's yours. Sister, this one is yours. You're very well. I don't know if they want pictures or whatever, but you can go. You can go to stand next to me. Oh, you want me here too? All right. Should be in the middle or the side. In the middle. In the middle. Yeah, not a problem. Oh.
We now go to the stage, Brother Chris Ferbert.
Thank you, Brother Andre. Good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly, can I ask Dr. Charles to come back to the stage? Just a small token of our appreciation to, and it says, with our greatest appreciation, we hereby present to Dr. Michael Charles, JP, HDL, with a token of our appreciation for being our keynote speaker on our 38th annual Labor Day banquet, August 30th, 2019. I trust everyone's had a wonderful evening. Certainly, my comments, as usual, will be brief. I would like to, first of all, thank the management and staff of the Fairmont Southampton Hotel for this evening. To our Master of Ceremonies, Brother Andre Rochester, once again, a big thank you. To Sister Thelma Simmons, who had her 2 minutes in the sun. Thank you for that warm welcome that you gave our guests this evening. And as always, a big thank you to Reverend Nicholas Genevieve Tweed for giving the opening prayer. And certainly this young man, I've seen him grow over the past, I think it might be 10 or 12 years now, and I'm talking about Willard Birch. That second solo really said, if you got a heart, it touched you. So if we all got a heart, it touched all of us. Thank you, Willard, for those two music selections. And once again, thank you to Randall Sean Hibbert for providing the dinner music. And as always, we have to continue to thank Sister Phaedra House for the programs that you see in front of you this evening. And of course, the information in those programs are put together by Sister Lamar Ferbert. So thank you to the both of them. And to the banquet committee, Certainly, thank you for organizing tonight's event. Can you all please just take a stand so we can give you a round of applause? I'm going to come back to the future leaders. I'm going to lead them for last because I normally would thank the speaker last, but tonight I'm going to thank the future leaders last, and I'm going to do that for a particular reason. Certainly, I want to thank Brother Marcus Wade, who introduced our guest speaker tonight. Thank you, Brother Marcus. Survey is interesting when we have, over the years, all the different speakers that we've had, whether they've been local or they've been international. And what I try to do is just make just a few brief comments. And certainly, I think it's important for us to understand that, we must stay, Dr. Charles mentioned that we must stay more connected. And I'll just mention a couple of things. Certainly to hear the story about 50,000 Canadian workers, looking at the right to strike were forced back to work. I think if you look at some of the things that we've been through as a country over the years, and it's not just the BRU, but certainly all the unions have had their labor challenges over the years. And certainly the Constitution says I have a right to belong to any organization I so choose. I have freedom of association, I have freedom of expression. When somebody takes away your right to strike, you got to know that that's the end. That is the end. Because all you have is your labor. And if somebody tells you that you can withdraw your labor, then we might as well go back post 1834 and go back to slavery. Certainly, I don't think anyone wants to go back there. We don't take up injustices because we want to take them up. We take them up because we have to. And as Dr. Charles just says, the unorganized also benefits from what organized labor does and continues to do on behalf of the people of Bermuda. Certainly, also in looking at, Brother Charles also mentioned that the savings of the government workers from 2012 to 2016, we collectively saved, the government employees saved the Bermuda government between $100 to $125 million, and that's a fact. And I dare anyone in government or in the private sector come out and differ. Because I know for a while the BRU membership alone, $25 million the government saved over that 5-year period. And that includes furlough days and includes wage freezes. So those numbers are real. So when we go to the table and they give us a 2% or 3% wage increase, don't jump out of your skin, because they sacrificed for 5 years without getting a wage increase. And they sacrificed, just a correction for Dr. Charles, 19 months worth of furlough days, not 18, 19 months where they lost pay. So certainly when people talk about the sacrifice the government workers have contributed on behalf of people of Bermuda, make sure you get it right. Finally, Dr. Charles mentioned, so many times you heard that Brother Artie was president for life. Now, Artie's been going since 1996. Now it's 2019. So contrary to what a lot of people think, and Dr. Charles is absolutely correct, the union is not Chris Febbert. The union is not Molly Burgess. The union weren't Derek Burgess. It's not George Scott as the chief organizer. The union is the membership. So when you say the union is weak, we're talking about ourselves. Because I like to think that, not to say that, we don't drop the ball from time to time, but very rarely it happens, because if we give you leadership and you decide to ignore the leadership and then in the end something goes wrong, who you going to blame? Oh, you blame the leader? Well, respectfully, Dr. Charles is 100% correct. When we get to understand that the union is each and every one of us, our motto is united we stand, divided we fall. And that is correct. Because in unity lies our greatest strength. Talk about that chain. You know what they say about the chain, right? The chain's only as strong as its weakest link. Remember that show used to come on, The Weakest Link? Y'all watch it? So certainly, Dr. Charles, let me say a sincere thank you on behalf of the Executive Board for your presentation this evening. Finally, I want to thank, there's 2 young future leaders that spoke tonight. Our future, meaning Bermuda. Not Chris Faber, not Marty Brothers, not Jason Haven, not Reverend Tweed. We're talking about Bermuda's future. And I was so glad to hear, and I'm gonna be like Stephen. Before getting somebody's name wrong, I'm gonna say Brother Darrell and Sister Robinson, right? And the reason for that is because when you hear a young person stand in front of you tonight and say some of the things that we've said to you over the years, is that we're gonna find that balance between them and us. Why? Because we all have one girl in mind. We don't want 2 Bermudas, I'm saying 2 Bermudas in respect, we got 2 Bermudas as relates to black and white. We're talking about that in one sense. We're talking about 2 Bermudas as relates to young people versus old. Because whilst we do have an opinion, and that opinion should be respected, whether young or old, we haven't been able for the better part of maybe a decade or 2 decades now to try to find that balance between young and old. Because it's either got to be my way or the highway. And that goes for both, whether it's a young person talking or an old person talking. And I honestly think if we could sit down and have some real conversations, because what I was told outside before we came in was that, and I think it should be worth noting, that Brother Darrell that stood in front of you tonight as a young person, I see him being respectfully, somebody, no disrespect to anyone else in Bermuda, rather young or old, but when you want to achieve the highest level that you can, that tells me that you're focused. So if I get let's say I get a B+, or I get an A, or I get 95%, or I get 99%. Brother Darrell's saying, well, I failed because I can get 100. And those kind of goals are good to have. Because too many times we have these small goals where we should have bigger goals with the understanding that we may not be able to reach the big goals, but we should set those goals. So it was important to hear him talk about the division between us, and he talked about the young and old. So he talked about the need to have a consensus between us, and he said that's imperative. So I'm not sure whether we're listening. So they're trying to reach out to us. And certainly, Sister Robinson mentioned that, she started off by saying, who am I? And I think that when Ryan came to the BIU in 2017, that the BIU saw an opportunity for us to maybe fill this void between young and old. And that's why the BIU Executive Board made the decision that this is a program we need to support. And what that program has done is growing from strength to strength. So Andre, let me hand it back over to you.
If everyone had a good evening, let me hear you give us a big round of applause, please. Thank you. If you did, let me hear you make some noise. Come on.